representation is key, I would like to pass the mic up to Lisa, if that's okay. I met Lisa, CEO of Second Line of Defence, at an event that she hosted in Brighton last year, where she brought Sussex Police, representatives from the council to discuss women's safety, and in that found out that you were leading in the security industry, and found out a lot things that I would subconsciously know anyway, in terms of, you know, the difference it makes when you go to a bar and there's a female bouncer outside, and how that woman will then communicate with you, and how much safer I feel. But I'm waffling on now, so I'm going to go back to my question, which is, what inspired you to lead in the private security industry? And I know this was connected to the tragic events of Sarah Everard. So tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to do what you're doing now.
Thank you for having me. It was a strange journey, but we were in lockdown. It was February 2021, and I was relocating from London, born and bred in South London, and I was super happy, and I got here, and the sun was shining, and literally within 4 or 5 days, I turned on the telly and the volume was down, and see this news bulletin, I thought that was serious. I put the volume up, and the words that were coming out the screen was, she'd been missing since last night, she called her boyfriend all the way home, and this sinking feeling in my stomach. I thought, oh my God, she's dead. You know, I just knew she's dead. And then about 2 days later, sure enough, we learned that Sarah Everard was murdered. But it was a perfect storm for me, this trifecta, because I've been a magistrate, I am a magistrate, I've been a magistrate for 13 years. So when I found out that the perpetrator of her death was a police officer, well, just inspiring. And as a woman, thinking, God, you know, we're in the 21st century, stuff is still happening. And also, she was murdered in my hometown. It's happened. And I've got 2 young teenage children, so my daughter's almost 18, my child's nearly 60. And I just thought, no, this is not what happened, this is not the world that I want for my children. And there was this fire in my belly. And I think maybe it comes up with being a woman of a certain age, or I'm sort of my mid-50s now. I was just like, I'm not having this anymore. This is unacceptable. And I remember thinking, what can I do about it? Like so many women at the time, you saw the protests at Clapham Common, sort of response from the Met Police. And I just thought, there's got to be something that I can do. And long story short, I kind of did some research into what was going on at a sort of safeguarding level, especially at that front line, and who are the people that are supposed to be responsible for safeguarding us. And I looked at the police force, particularly the Met, obviously, and you know the issues that they've had, but that, you know, resourcing in those areas have kind of taken a plummet, and that private security and basically starting to fill those roles. But the difference in terms of the sort of the period of training and the vetting that a private security officer get as opposed to a police officer is vastly different. So we have this industry that's been regulated for about 20 years, but that there is no sort of level of benchmarking, no standardization training, and that these are the people that essentially are going to be looking after my loved ones. And as a woman, what I recognise is that for women, for years, for too long, I was born, I was conditioned into this, is that we have to take responsibility for our own safety, as opposed to the other people in the world checking themselves, behaving themselves. And I thought, I am going to do something about this, because I am not going to allow my 18-year-old girl, that she's about to go off to university, I do not want her to think that she has to minimise herself for anyone. So I'm going to show her that I can do more, and that I'm going to do as much as I can to show her that this is not the way that she needs to lead her life. So off I went, as you do, and I super often do the door supervisor training course, because I thought, I want to know what it's like. I want to show them that it can be done better. So I did the course, I loved it, and I met some really amazing people, and I thought, you know what, Lisa, you can't stop there. You've actually got to go and do the job. So fresh in Brighton, September 2021, I passed my door supervisor course, flying colours at a great time, and the very first gig I had was a Labour Party conference. And I remember the company that I worked for at the time was called BNY, And they were all completely fascinated with him. Like, who's this crazy black woman who decided to do this film? It's like, they called me Judge Judy. So I tell you what, Judy, you're front line. I was like, what? So I put this flak jacket on, they put this flak jacket on, massive securities. They were like, you're going to be the face of this event, they're going to love you. And that was the smartest thing that they could have done, because of course they realised that there was a woman who was invested in the work that she was doing, but peroxide at the time, peroxide blonde hair, red nails, just really, really a bit part because I had to look my best. And I just greeted everyone. I disarmed them. I remember seeing Steve come, "Hi, Steve." I was name checking everyone. They were just like, I was like, best threat to the Labour Party members, like massive parties as well. So I knew everyone by the time the event was over, but the idea was to show people that there was another way, basically. And it's all about empathy, it's about communication. And I think we talked about superpowers. I think my superpower is the ability to talk to everyone and anyone. I literally can have a conversation with you about anything. Your shoes, your hair, anything. And just, I think people find it quite disarming. But I think that's the whole point. Safeguarding is not just a security person's job, it's actually everybody's job, it's all our responsibility. But more importantly, from a front line perspective in private security, it is absolutely essential that the industry is fit for purpose and that the people in those roles have a degree of competency, not just in the skill of disarming someone or de-escalating a situation, but actually learning about the community that they are there to safeguard. So we live in Brighton with a huge LGBTQ plus community, very diverse people, but we need to make sure that those people that are coming across the threshold into an industry, that we know about them. So for example, I remember early on working in some of the clubs in Brighton, and I remember quite a few people going through transition would come with their passport, which they would refer to as their dead name. And I would see men, mainly, on the door, grilling that person, who obviously didn't look like their picture, in front of a queue of about 100 people. And I would have to take this person and say, this is absolutely unacceptable. There are ways in which you can deal with this situation. You need to be better. And that's all I want from the industry, so you need to be better, you need to be invested in your community, you need to take time now, you need to, I talk about cultural competency, and I think that this is a degree of training that is missing across the board, not just in private security, many industry sectors, but cultural competency. Competency is so important, and without which you're not going to have the trust or gain the trust of the people and the legitimacy needed to do that well. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to have a fight with anyone who gets on the wrong side of me because they interfered with my daughter. It's not like I'm going to come deal with you. So I just better train you all so that we don't have that conversation. So that was the driving force. And for me, it was a tragedy that basically awakened in me as a woman that, at 50 odd years on, I should not be worried about my safety. I should not be fearing about my loved ones, in particular my daughter, and the future that she has to go about her everyday business.
Fascinating. In fact, you kind of answered my next question. So I'm going to answer, you're such a positive character, and you're sharing some quite negative situations there. And I can imagine you overcoming them literally with your personality and your presence and energy. But did you experience any challenges that you didn't expect along the way that might have been difficult for you to manage?
To be quite honest, no, because I just, as I say, I kill them with kindness. But I did see, I did, again, there are, I say this all the time, I think there are a number of people that work in, especially in private security, you should not be doing the job. They should literally get rid of that badge, never give it to them, because they are a danger. Thankfully, I think we are in the minority. And then I think the biggest cohort are a group of mainly men who would like to do things differently but have never been shown the way. And this is where I think the work that I do and with some of my colleagues and the collaboration that I do this is where we can make the impact. So as I said, I see bad behaviour through sort of, this is, we've always done it, and we've never been shown another way. But not because they are bad people per se, but just picked up bad habits, right?
Sure.
So luckily for me, I've got enough for me as well, so if anyone, very good, so I'm going to have a pop with me, well,
Brilliant. And in fact, one last question, which is in relation to the event that you hosted last year, which was about bringing the council, the police, representatives within security together to consider ways in which we can safeguard women in our community better and make sure that what happened to Sarah O'Gard never happens again. What are you working on going forward? Like, what do you see the goal? What does that look like?
I mean, I remember when I came into the industry, and so 2021 is when I became a qualified door supervisor. But no one in the literally no one in the private security industry knew who I was. I think it was sort of January 2023 when I sort of started to throw myself out. I've been turning up at networking events and having a go with the CEO of the regulatory body. So I've got a few things to say to you. What have you been up to the last 20 years? But so I basically systemic change. And I remember when I first said that to an industry of mainly men who, they just do things the way they do it. And what does she know? She worked in advertising, for God's sake, for 2 years. She's only been a daughter. I was like, let me stop you there. And I said, no, I won't settle for anything less, because safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. And I think there's been a really sort of binary approach to the way in which, people view safeguarding. They kind of, in my industry, private security, it's about stopping people from getting into places, as opposed to ensuring that the safety of that person when they cross the threshold is the best that it can be. So whilst they're in the queue, when they get into the venue, and then when they leave as well. And it's about collaborating with the other safeguarding entities, because it's not just one person. So let's just say Chalk, for example. The idea that the guys or girls standing in the door are only responsible, for customers once they leave the club is nonsense, because there's that whole area outside Poole Valley where it's kicked off there all the time. Now, it would be remiss of them to be standing by those doors and watch that stuff going on and not do anything about it. But it's ways in which you can deal with community policing. We now have night safety marshals run by Resolve Security, brilliant team of people who are out on the weekends who do an absolutely amazing job. And they've also just brought that to Worthing as well, where I live. So it's about talking and joining up the dots to ensure that every element of a night out, let's just say, it's not just about night time either, is actually joined up. So we're talking to the people who run the taxi rank. We also make sure that the bus is running at the right time to take the students back to Falmouth. There is so much more that we could be doing in terms of collaboration to ensure that we mitigate as much as possible, to ensure that, in particular, a woman, when she gets dressed up to go out, is just going to have the best night of her life, as opposed to whether how she's going to get home and whether anything is going to happen to her on that journey.
More, and I hope to see more of your representatives around our city. Okay.